With the enormous new expansion Fantasy Springs set to open at Tokyo DisneySea in just a few months, there's so much buzz and excitement around this unprecedented area, and rightly so. We're getting 4 brand new rides, all unique to this park, as well as a new in-park hotel and lots of new restaurants and areas to explore. We've been waiting for this to open for 5 years, so it's gonna be so weird suddenly having nothing to look forward to in DisneySea's future. Tokyo Disneyland next door will be getting a new Space Mountain, but what can we expect in DisneySea's future? Is there any land left to expand into? And what Disney properties could come to this park? I'm Jordan from 8-Bit Theme Park Japan. I live in Tokyo and I'm obsessed with these parks, so let me take you through what we can expect for the future of Tokyo DisneySea. So to get an idea of the future, one must first look into the past. What does DisneySea's past tell us? Well, as is usually the case with major theme parks, the park was designed with expansion pads allocated and even some rides already decided for the future. Tower of Terror and Soaring were already designed for other Disney parks around the world before Tokyo DisneySea opened, and you can see Soaring in some very early plans for DisneySea. There are other expansion pads which weren't pre-decided, which have since been used for Raging Spirits, Jasmine's Flying Carpets, and Toy Story Mania. This leaves very few spaces to expand into now, so you might be thinking we can expect to see some rides removed or altered, but again, if we look at the history of this park, there's only one ride the park has ever removed since it opened in 2001, and that's Storm Rider. And the ride system and building are still there, just with a new name and a new ride sequence. Both of the Tokyo Disney parks are enormously popular, 2 of the 4 most popular theme parks in the world, to be precise, and the expansions going on right now prove that OLC, the owners of the resort, are clearly keen to expand and increase capacity so that they can welcome more guests and make more money. Makes sense, right? So other than the one area that I'll talk about later, I don't think we'll be seeing parts of the park being removed or significantly altered anytime soon. Let's face it, even though the park is 23 years old, it still looks fantastic. So, if they want to expand the park in the future, where is there room to do so, and what could they put there? Let's start with the smaller ones, and we'll get to the bigger, more exciting ones later. When Toy Story Mania was added to the park in 2012, they built the delightful Toyville Trolley Park area onto American Waterfront. It's very pretty, especially at nighttime, but it's kind of a dead end, and there's not much reason to go there unless you're going on the ride. If you saw my last video, you'll know that Mr. Potato Head doesn't even appear there lately, so that gives you even less reason to go. When you ride the monorail to DisneySea, you can see the car park behind Toy Story Mania. It's not enormous, but there is a reasonable amount of room to expand into here. Right now, the queue line kind of blocks off the end of this area, but it's not hard to imagine them relocating the queue and opening this up as a thoroughfare into a newly expanded area. But what could they put here? Okay, this suggestion is really boring, so I'm sorry, and I would never even suggest this, except Walt Disney World already did it. So hey, maybe Tokyo could too. Build another Toy Story Mania. The ride is hugely popular here, even after 12 years, and we said OLC need to increase capacity at the parks, right? Well, one way of doing that is to increase the capacity of the rides. However, that wouldn't really solve the dead end problem. I consider myself a creative person, but I tried, and I'm really struggling to think of what else you could do in this space. Add a Toy Story meet and greet? A flat ride or two, similar to those at Pixar Pier at California Adventure? Let me know in the comments what you think they should do with this space. I really want to know what ideas you come up with, because I'm so stumped. But yeah, we do have room to expand there, so there must be something we can do with it, right? Okay, so that's expansion pad number 1. The next one is really intriguing, as it used to have some backstage buildings, but those were flattened and relocated back in 2020, so they've created some space there that they can use. It also used to be home to a meet and greet, but has been left empty for a long time now. In the Mermaid Lagoon area of the park, guests used to be able to meet Ariel in Ariel's Grotto. This outdoor meet and greet is tucked away across the river from the rest of Mermaid Lagoon, and it's very easy to imagine this sparse area of the park becoming home to a pretty large ride. Rumor has it that Disney pitched the Ariel's Undersea Adventure ride that was built in the American parks to OLC to build in Tokyo a long time ago, but they thought the quality wasn't up to snuff, so they rejected it. If they were going to build the ride though, it would definitely be going in this spot. There have been other concepts for a Little Mermaid dark ride floating around for a long time now, including one that Imagineering legend Tony Baxter worked on for Disneyland Paris, which would have utilized a suspended ride system similar to Peter Pan's flight. Last year, the ride manufacturer Vekoma, who Disney have worked with a lot, showcased their new suspended dark ride system, which allows the vehicles to turn and move in other ways to enhance the ride experience. This thing looks amazing, and I would love to see it in a theme park, and I think this is a perfect fit. So, could a suspended Little Mermaid ride be good enough for OLC to greenlight for this area of the park? I'm sure they didn't move those backstage buildings for nothing. Finally, there is one last expansion pad that is available in the park, but before we start speculating, let's look at what OLC themselves first announced here long before Fantasy Springs was ever conceived. You see, Fantasy Springs didn't start out as this triple mini-land monster of an area. It was originally simply supposed to capitalize on the wild success of just one movie, and you can probably guess which one it is. I'm not going to go into detail about how Frozen was much more successful than anyone at Disney anticipated, because I'm sure you've heard all that before, but it is worth pointing out that the film was especially popular here in Japan, which isn't always the case with films that do well in the Western markets. OLC, the owners of Tokyo Disney Resort, wanted to act fast to capitalize on all the buzz around the new animated musical, which is kind of funny now, as it's been over 10 years since the movie came out, and the Frozen area still hasn't opened, but hey, it's opening soon. But yeah, as you can see here, originally OLC announced that Arendelle would be joining Tokyo DisneySea as its 8th port of call. The area would have made use of a plot in the southwest corner of the park, in between Lost River Delta, where Indiana Jones Adventure is, and Port Discovery, where you find Nemo and Friends Sea Rider. Presumably it would have meant the closure of the Mickey and Friends meeting trail in this area, but other than that, you can see in the artwork that Port Discovery wouldn't have been touched, and the area would basically entirely sit on the currently undeveloped land between the river and the monorail that goes around this side of the park. The land would have been quite similar to what ended up being built as part of Fantasy Springs. One ride, one restaurant, and clearly visible in the artwork is Arendelle Castle and Elsa's Ice Castle on the mountaintop. Now clearly, getting 3 mini-lands instead of just one is amazing, but there are some things I prefer about this design over what they ended up building. Ever since they broke ground on Fantasy Springs, I've always said that it feels so separate to the rest of the park, almost like it's its own little mini park. It's the only port. Oh yeah, by the way, that's what they call the areas of DisneySea. They call them ports instead of lands. Anyway, it's the only port that has ever been added to the park, and it really shows. It's the only one to have only one entrance and exit, unless you're counting the actual park entrance that's in the hotel, which also adds to that separate kind of feeling. It has its own entrance. I think there's a good chance it's going to be the only port that you can't see Mount Prometheus, the volcano, from. We won't know for sure until we get in there. And you can see Mount Prometheus in the background in this footage, but this is shot on a drone. Like, the guests are not going to be flying around this area, so I'm not sure. I have an inkling we're not going to be able to see it, but I really hope that they have found a way to give you that view of Mount Prometheus, because every other port in the park has a fantastic view of the volcano, and it ties into the stories of every land in the park. Fantasy Springs is also the only port that the transit steamer line doesn't go through, and that's because it's the only one that the river doesn't go through. This waterway is like the veins of DisneySea pumping blood throughout the park, and it's not going to touch Fantasy Springs. However, this little Arendelle port, you can see right here that the waterway is right next to it, so I think it would have felt much more like part of the park than Fantasy Springs does. The overall theme makes a lot more sense too, having a Scandinavian port rather than magical spirits that rebuilt places from stories or whatever Fantasy Springs is. It would have been based loosely, albeit, on an actual place, similar to many of the other areas of the park. However, if we're comparing it to the other ports, I do understand the criticism that it lacked the same kind of scale and oomph that something like Mediterranean Harbor or American Waterfront have. In fact, basically any of the ports in the park. And a lot of people saw the expansion as short-term thinking, quickly trying to capitalize on the huge success of a new movie rather than putting the time and money into something that stood up to the high expectations that this park sets. Anyway, eventually these plans were scrapped and obviously they became Fantasy Springs. But what can they tell us about the future? Well, we know for a fact that this area is earmarked for some kind of expansion, right? They announced one in the past. They're clearly happy to build something there. And there is one port in the park that is also kind of small, with 2 rides and a restaurant, and that's Port Discovery, which is right next to this plot of land. In 2017, they changed the area's anchor attraction, Storm Rider, into Nemo and Friends Sea Rider in a bid to appeal more to families with young children and also to breathe new life into this less than popular area of the park. So that would kind of suggest that OLC are not super precious about Port Discovery. Like, they've already changed the area's signature ride. Who's to say they wouldn't make more changes here in the future? The Nemo and Friends Sea Rider ride was 7 years ago, and now this attraction is again one of the least popular in the park. Also, the Storm Rider ride that was there previously, it tied the whole land together and it made sense thematically, but now it's a little bit hodgepodge. We're all Disney Parks fans, we know how it goes. We've all seen Tomorrowland. You know what happens when Disney tried to cram Pixar into somewhere where it doesn't really belong. So yeah, they tried to change it to being about science, even though there is nothing educational in this entire area. So it's definitely the weakest of the ports, let's just say that. And it really doesn't feel like too much of a stretch to think if the plot of land they wanted to use for the Frozen port wasn't big enough, in the future, hey, maybe they'll be willing to eat into Port Discovery to really bulk that area up and create a port that really does match the scale of the other ones around the park. So I think Port Discovery could be on the chopping block. While it would be sad to lose an opening day port, and I do really like Port Discovery to be honest, this has always been the least impressive one in the park, and even feeling like unfinished in some areas. There are these silver walls at the back that look like construction walls. I'm convinced they were supposed to build something behind them, but then they opened the park and just never got around to it. My podcast co-host Alex, oh yeah, check out the Land of the Rising Fun podcast if you want like casual weekly chats about the Tokyo Disney parks. He always says that it seems like they forgot about Port Discovery when they were budgeting the park, and they were quickly like, oh no, there's supposed to be 7 ports, quick, put something there. There's a lot I do love about this area though, including Aquatopia, which basically takes up the majority of the space, but with some creative thinking, that could be rethemed to fit with a new area. One thing that would be a lot harder to retheme though is the electric railway. These were brilliantly designed by the Imagineering legend Bob Gurr to seamlessly blend into American waterfront's 1920s New York and also the neo-Victorian futuristic utopia of Port Discovery. It's done so well that it's hard to imagine how this could fit into the area if it was themed around something else. Okay, so what else could it be themed around? Let's have some fun and dive into speculation for what this area could be. I believe that there are some big clues in the park's nighttime spectacular, Believe Sea of Dreams. The show includes lots of characters that currently exist in the park, such as Ariel and the Genie, whilst also including characters that will be coming soon in Fantasy Springs, like Elsa, Rapunzel, and Peter Pan, who the show largely revolves around. But there are 2 characters in the show that you can't currently find anywhere in the park, but they would both fit here perfectly. Now, do I think these characters are in this show because something is definitely coming soon? No, I don't think they're thinking that far ahead, but I do think it gives us some clues as to what Disney properties OLC considers to be a fit for the park. The first one is one that would fit into an existing port, so let's start with him. There is a significant portion of the show taken up with songs and characters from Pixar's Coco, which with its Mexican theme could be perfectly integrated into the park's South American port, Lost River Delta. They even have a restaurant called Miguel's already. If we're honest, I think this is why he's included in this show, as he like represents this area of the park, but he's not there. Hey, maybe they want to fix that. The corner we talked about earlier, where Arendelle was first announced to be, could easily be integrated into Lost River Delta if they wanted to use the space for a Coco attraction of some kind. Or if they didn't want to build on such a large scale, the Miguel's restaurant I mentioned is one of the least popular in the park. Its menu was recently decimated, and now they just serve stuff that you can find in other areas of the park anyway, so it has even less of a draw. And then right next door to that is the Hangar Stage, which is a theater which has been completely empty for 3 years. I think they could make Coco fit here too if they were to build a smaller attraction or integrate Miguel into these existing spaces. Of course, I would much rather they went big with Coco, as I think the places from the film are so much fun, and they need enough space to fully immerse you in those worlds. Coco is not only in the Believe Sea of Dreams show at DisneySea, but he's also in the parade Harmony in Color over at Tokyo Disneyland next door. And he's in the Mickey's PhilharMagic show, so it's clear that OLC are happy to use this property, and hey, maybe something more concrete will come in the future. The other character featured prominently in the Believe Sea of Dreams nighttime show, which wouldn't fit into any existing areas at all, is Moana. Moana is perfect for this park. Think about this movie. Where is it set? The sea! The vast majority of the movie is in the sea. It's all about the sea. The sea is even a character in the movie. And on top of all that, Moana has been the biggest hit Disney have had since Frozen. You can easily imagine them wanting to build an area. Hey, Disney already showed us artwork of a Moana area that they're not building at Animal Kingdom in Florida. So OLC will definitely have seen some different plans and proposals from Imagineers that include Moana. If our favorite wooded corner of the park was enough room for a Frozen boat ride and restaurant, then why not a Moana one? It would continue to add more in the park for young children to enjoy. It's a perfect fit, and it's a Disney property that has proven to have staying power 8 years on, with a sequel and live-action remake coming soon. Again, I do feel like at least Sea Rider, but potentially the whole of Port Discovery could be on the table too, which would give them the scope to make a land that really stands up alongside the other areas of the park. I could even see them getting Aquatopia to fit in with this. Maybe Moana has created some small boats for people to learn to sail, and the sea is playfully moving them around and spinning them around. And I know, I'd rather the park got stuff that's not based on movies too, but Disney animated movies have always been a big part of this park's identity, with Arabian Coast and Mermaid Lagoon both being there since opening day, and with Fantasy Springs opening soon, it's pretty clear that OLC wants the park to appeal to a broader audience. And I mean, if I was paying the ridiculous prices that OLC are paying to have the rights to use Disney movies, I would be using them too. Like, why wouldn't you? It's kind of a miracle that we ever got stuff that's not based on Disney in these parks, you know? So yeah, if I was to put money on anything in this video, I don't know when, but I really feel like Moana will be at DisneySea someday. It's just such a good fit for the park. There is another property though that Disney own, which in its second installment became very much about the water and the ocean. And when that film came out, we even saw some promotional material inside DisneySea, actually pretty close to where this expansion plot is. The cool thing about this one is that it would be giving DisneySea back some of that adult edge that it had when it opened. You may have already figured out that I'm talking about Avatar. These movies are huge and they currently don't exist in Tokyo Disney Resort at all. Very recently, we saw some artwork come out of California for an Avatar area based on the second movie, Avatar: The Way of Water, which would also be a perfect fit for this park. Look at this, there's water. It's perfect. And like I said, I think this would help to like rebalance after all the family-friendly stuff that's come there recently. This would give older guests a bit more to do, but if I'm perfectly honest, I think DisneySea will always have enough for those guests. I think they do need to keep adding stuff for younger kids. And let's put the more adult stuff over in Disneyland now, so that both parks can appeal to as many people as possible. And if you look, that's basically what's already happening. Fantasy Springs coming to DisneySea, and then a new indoor roller coaster, Space Mountain, coming to Tokyo Disneyland, which is obviously not for small kids. So this seems to be OLC's strategy, at least for the time being. Get the parks to balance out, rather than having one that's for young families and one that's for adults going on a date or whatever. Getting back to Avatar and trying to stick it in our favorite little corner of the park, I do think this area is too small for Avatar. I think they could have made Frozen work there. I think they could make Moana there, although I'd rather they didn't. But Avatar, I think, needs a lot more space. It demands it. Unfortunately, I haven't been to Avatar World of Pandora in Animal Kingdom yet, but a huge part of that is clearly exploring the area, and you need enough space to be able to do that, as well as fitting a big e-ticket ride in there. So yeah, sorry Sea Rider, but I think we're flattening that again too if Avatar comes. And once again, like I said about Moana, I actually think Aquatopia could fit even better into an Avatar area. You know, right now, these are supposed to be helping to teach us about the ocean, and we're going out and exploring the ocean using these devices. That doesn't seem too far of a stretch for an Avatar world. Electric Railway? Maybe it would need some changes, but I think people would kind of accept that for Avatar. Maybe. It is a stretch. I don't know. Another Disney property that kind of blends science fiction with a love of the ocean is Lilo and Stitch. And I think like 10 or 15 years ago would have been the perfect time to build a Lilo and Stitch area in this park. I think that juxtaposition the film has between sci-fi aliens and Hawaii would be a really nice fit for Tokyo DisneySea, and just for a theme park land in general. You base it after the film when they've integrated aliens into their society, and it's very easy to think of some fun Hawaii sci-fi mashups that they could do there, as well as a ride. I think that the ship has sailed on that one, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I just want to manifest a Lilo and Stitch area somewhere. I think that could be a lot of fun. Oh, I get so excited thinking about the different ways that the most stunningly beautiful theme park in the world could grow in the future. And it starts in just a few weeks when Fantasy Springs finally opens. I'm going to be right there, staying in Fantasy Springs Hotel on opening weekend. So be sure to subscribe if you want to see everything that this new area has to offer. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. I hugely appreciate all of those. And if you want to learn more about Tokyo DisneySea, I'm sure you'll love this video where I talk about the top 10 animatronics in this breathtaking park.